Peace and love, all. Welcome to the Help to Adjust podcast, where we deal with issues of psychology, equity, and inclusion. And we talk to people who have life experiences that are impactful. Today, we have someone who's my brother, someone who's a friend, but someone whose life reflects a lot of experience, particularly around being having a tough life at the beginning and then getting into counseling and helping other people, and then becoming a host and person who interacted with a lot of celebrities through video music box early in your career, and then becoming a comedian and businessman, person who's been doing comedy in New York for over 25 years. I would like everybody to welcome my brother, Ray Dejon.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it, bro.
Absolutely, man. So, I mean, just to jump right in your early life, before getting into the entertainment world, you were a person that got into a bit of trouble, right? And you actually
A bit. That's an understatement.
that's an understatement.
Okay.
So you were incarcerated right here in New York. Talk about your experience.
Okay. So I grew up in a neighborhood which everybody thinks is bougie, which is called Park Slope, Brooklyn. But back in the 70s, or the 60s and the 70s, Park Slope wasn't what it is today.
Right.
It was riddled with gangs and racial tension, and from the Italians not liking the blacks and the Puerto Ricans and, the tomahawks and the jolly stompers and the baby homicides and all that stuff that you guys, people hear about now. That was the neighborhood that I grew up in. And although it was Park Slope, the buildings that we lived in were city owned. So they took like maybe 30 abandoned brownstone buildings and they made them city buildings. It's almost like they took brownstones and they created the projects out of it. So it was low income. And so, I grew up in a family of 8 children, single parent. Well, eventually she became single, but she raised us practically on her own. Family dynamics is crazy. But just to give you a little bit, and then, we could kind of go back and forth. Being and living under those circumstances, it presented me with a bunch of challenges that I kind of fell victim to. And, it just turned my life into chaos until I kind of got it together later on in life.
Yep. And that neighborhood, Park Slope, it kind of was mob related at one time.
It was. So Union Street was the border between the Italians and the Puerto Ricans and blacks. So Puerto Ricans and blacks lived on the side of Union Street that's closer to Flatbush Avenue. Everything on the other side was Italian, and there was a lot of like mob, those kind of like membership places that they have, the hangouts or whatever. The social clubs, right? And there's still, until this day, they still have a bunch of those in that area. But yeah, there was a bunch of that, and they actually had to bus us to school. And because we couldn't stop, the bus couldn't stop in that neighborhood. They had to take us straight into the school, which was located on the Italian side. So the bus would take us straight over there and then bring us straight back. So there was a lot of racial tension back then, along with a mixture of, I'd say, the Italians, which some people would consider back then white trash, sort of. Then you had the ghetto or the underprivileged, black and Hispanics that, were on welfare and stuff like that. And then you had the rich white people that was up the block on 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue near Prospect Park. So it was an interesting mix of people in that neighborhood, which created, a bunch of problems.
Mm-hmm. So how did you first end up getting into trouble?
So, you know, when I explain and describe things to you now, Don, I have a better perspective because I'm now educated and I learned it. But I wasn't thinking like this back then. But let me just put a couple of labels on some of what I went through. 8 children. Once I became a teenager, and my mom became a single parent, and I'll explain to you why she became a single parent later, it presented me with a bunch of different challenges where my mom could not pay attention to us individually. She had to work a couple of jobs, and she was on welfare. She was just a very disciplinary approach to parenting, and, you know, you do this, you do that. None of the sit down, let me explain this to you. It was none of that. So with 8 children in the house, you could kind of get lost and you're all bucking for some kind of position. So basically, you know, I gravitated more to the street, to my friends. And eventually the peer pressure influenced me to start, you know, and it was crazy because it was at a later age. I went all the way to the 11th grade in high school. And then once I transferred from a local school and I went to a high school and I could actually meet new people, things changed. And I just started gravitating towards groups that made me feel like I was a part of it. And in order to feel a part of it, you had to keep up with it. So I didn't have the money to keep up with it. So I started compromising and I started shoplifting and I started doing petty crimes and stuff like that. And eventually, I started experimenting with drugs. And, you know, back then in the 70s, cocaine was like a number one thing. And I eventually started using that and then dropped out in the 11th grade. And from there, things just spiraled like out of control. Started getting arrested, burglary, attempted robbery, grand larceny, stealing cars. Eventually landing in prison for an attempted armed robbery with a weapon. I did a couple of small bits, 30 days, 60 days, 6 months. And then eventually they gave me 3 years and I had to go up to Elmira Correctional Facility. And at the time I was youthful offender. I was only, when I got charged with that crime, I was 16 years old. They gave me 5 years probation and they allowed me to keep what's called a youthful offender so it wouldn't reflect on my record later. But I violated the probation by getting arrested again for petty stuff. So they revoked my probation and sent me upstate. And in going upstate, I was able to get my GED. I started going to college. The Albany State University used to send their professors there when the state prisons were allowing inmates to become educated. So I started school there. And it was at that point, you know, while I was incarcerated, I said that I really wanted to make a change, which I learned later on, I really wasn't changing. It was already in me because my mom really impressed upon us values, principles, and morals. Getting influenced by my peers and falling into that conditioning of social peer pressure and social influences, I deviated from what my mom kind of instilled in me. So when I snapped out of it, it was easier for me to go back because I already had a foundation.
Right.
I learned later on in life that some people never had a foundation and they have to start from scratch being an adult, which is kind of crazy. So that was kind of like a jump start for my recovery process in recovering from being a victim and not being a victim anymore and trying to do something about my life. The only thing was, Don, when I was in the street and I was hustling and I was making money, I never thought that when I was using drugs, I had a problem because I always had the money to buy it. So when I came home from prison in 1984, I got a job, but I still wanted to get high. I didn't want to go back to jail. I didn't want to hustle. I didn't want to, do that. But I still wanted to get high. The problem is cocaine absorbed my salary in a day or two. And so then I realized what addiction really was because then I started stealing from my job and I was working as a housekeeping person in New York Hospital. Got to meet President Nixon when he was in there, like it was that type of place. And I started stealing from there, and eventually getting fired, going into the street. Right before the crack epidemic done, there was this, people were using cocaine, but they called it freebasing. So I learned how to freebase. I used cocaine intranasally for years, but freebasing 3 months. Took me out, and I voluntarily, through my aunt who knew somebody that worked for a program, I voluntarily put myself in a drug program January 4th, 1986. And that was the last day that I got high.
Yeah. It's a great story, man.
Yeah.
It's a great story, especially considering the fact that after you went through that tough time in your life, like you said, the foundation that you had allowed you to kind of take a different path and do some stuff that was useful. And, as a counselor, you and I even worked together with you helping some of the people that was seeking alcohol treatment. And so talk about that, your transition from that phase of life to the education you got that brought you into helping people.
Yeah. So my first job was a housekeeping. That's not what I wanted to do, but I also didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my strengths were. I didn't know what motivated me. I didn't know what made me depressed. I couldn't put a finger on or label anything until I went into treatment and I started getting counseling. And the counselor said to me one day, she said, her name was Cynthia, I'll never forget her. She said, "You really speak well. You're very articulate. You make people laugh. You have a great sense of humor. I think you should be a counselor because I think people will listen to you." I was like, "Really?" She was like, "I'm telling you, you're really good at it. When you're in group, you articulate yourself well. You speak to others well. People are not intimidated by you." That was the first time I realized that there was something about me that was cool. Like, it's like, oh, damn, I got a skill. Like, I'm good at that. She's like, "You don't even understand how good you are at that." To the point where while I was in treatment, they made me a junior counselor. I'm a resident. They made me a junior counselor. I was in charge of a lot of stuff. So I started getting this feeling of leadership and like, yo, people listen to me. People pay attention to me. They kind of honor like what I'm saying, and it kind of means something. Yeah. So I started feeling like, yo, I'm good at that. I want to become a counselor. Yeah. I want to do that now. And I stayed in the program 8 months, became a counselor. My first counseling job, it still exists. This program is called Under 21 Covenant House. It was ran by a Catholic organization, and it was a shelter for kids that were under 21. And that was my first counseling position was there. And it was there when I started to connect with people, and I started realizing even more in a job capacity now. I'm talking to a group of 200 teenagers, and they're all paying attention, and they're listening to every word I say. Mm. And so I started placing more value on, like, damn, yo, I'm pretty good.
It was finding your identity in a way.
I was kind of, finding myself. And my sense of humor, though, Don, even before becoming a counselor, I was one of those guys in the neighborhood. Back in the days, we call it ranking people out. They call it snapping now or whatever, or roasting. I was good at it. People wanted to fight me. I was so good at it. That part of me also started to surface, and I started embracing my sense of humor more. And when I started learning more about myself and learning about what I was going through at home, the domestic violence at home, how did I get through that? How did I get through incarceration? What was my survival tool? And when I started being able to put a finger on stuff and label stuff, I'm like, damn, that's why these dudes never really, they tried me. Like, it was like, yo, this dude Ray is funny, man. We want to lock by him. So I helped to pass the time away through my sense of humor. It also kept the goons off of me. It also made it like, yo, that dude Ray is cool. He know mad people, so I knew a lot of people. So now my network is tight. I got a sense of humor. I advocate for the other inmates. We had a paper in the prison called Numero Uno. I was the editor. I'm writing articles about what's happening in the prison and defending us and our rights. And so I became this dude in prison. Like, everybody kind of looked up to me, but not on a gangster level, on a respectful level. I later realized that the skill of my sense of humor, the skill of being able to network and people kind of gravitating towards my personality was my coping mechanism to get through. When I used to see my mom get beat, when I used to see or hear my sisters being sexually abused or anything like that, I used to leave the home stressed. But I would go on the street and I would have fun with my friends and I would roast people and I would just go and that kind of would be my thing. And all the other stuff that I fell into as well. So I actually started saying, wow, man, I'm kind of worth something, man. I got these skills here and I want to use them. And then working in the programs, I would voluntarily do the fundraising. We had a fashion show I would commentate. I would freestyle it. People came up to me and said, yo, you got a business card? I would love to use you for my talent show. You'd be good to host. I'm like, really? Made a business card done. People started hiring me to host fashion shows, to do this. That's when I was inspired to audition for the video show called Dance Tracks USA. It was the first video show I was on. Went to the audition. The dude took me on the spot. I got that gig, and then Video Music Box at the time was extremely popular. It was on 6 days a week. I said, I got to get on that show. All this time, I'm working regular jobs. And I kept going to the show, trying to get an audition, trying to get a meeting with Ralph McDaniels. Then one day during the holidays, it was mad busy. He needed an extra host. He gave me a shot.
So you physically went there. Where was it?
Yeah. His office was located by the Brooklyn Bridge. It was a city-owned building right off the Brooklyn Bridge. Right, forgot the address. But he had an office in there. It was WNYE Television, which was a TV station owned by New York City. And it was based out of there. And he finally said, yo, I'm going to put you on, Ray. I'm going to give you a shot. And it's been 30 years. Mm-hmm. The show is going to go on 40 years. I've been with Ralph McDaniels 30 out of the 40. Wow. Which gave me another dimension to my life. And eventually, human services could be rough. From working in JCAP, which is called Jamaica Community Adolescent Program in Queens, or Samaritan Village I worked at Daytop. I worked on Rikers Island in the Substance Abuse Intervention Division. I put my time in, but when you're a dedicated social person, you get burnt out quicker in human services. And it started taking a toll on me because I'm so involved, whether I was a counselor, senior counselor, assistant director, and then finally a director of an outpatient program. I was still involved like I was a counselor, because that's my nature.
Very connected to the people you're trying to help, which is beautiful, but taxing on the human spirit.
Taxing. You know about burnout, the burnout syndrome. I started feeling like it was moments where I didn't care. I'm like, yo. But then this other thing was pulling me. The entertainment thing was pulling me. So at the same time I'm making this transition into entertainment, I was burning out in the human services field. And then one day, for me getting booked, doing shows, being on Video Music Box, my popularity in New York City is crazy now. People are hiring me. I'm getting more money to host. I'm getting $500 to do this, $1,000 to do that. I'm on TV. I'm kind of locally famous. One day, I hosted this event in Cancun called the Cancun All-Star Fiesta. After that, I resigned from my job and I said, I'm going on my own, and I created Dejon Entertainment, LLC. And I've been independent ever since. If I do anything, it'll be something like with you, or I'll go do motivational speaking, or I'll do some consultation with certain people. But other than that, I've stuck to entertainment. And again, being in entertainment, being on Video Music Box, interviewing people like Tupac, Biggie, Stevie Wonder, Left Eye, Big Pun, all these entertainers, famous people, sports people. The reason why I was good at interviewing was because of my sense of humor. I made people feel comfortable, and I would, make light out of certain things, and I wasn't the type to try to expose them. I would make it a comfortable interview. And Ralph McDaniels recognized that. He's like, wow, you're really good. So he winded up giving me interviews like Biggie and Tupac, and I did the original Kings of Comedy, Eminem, like all these superstars that were coming up, because I was natural at it. I didn't go to school for journalism. I didn't go to school for television. It came naturally to me, and Ralph recognized that. So now it's this other thing now that I'm like, wow, I can do that. But in every aspect, whether it's counseling, whether it's doing a seminar, whether it's doing Video Music Box, whether it's hosting a wedding or a fashion show, my sense of humor is what stood out. And I started recognizing this as the go-to or the core or the power of who I am as an individual. That's my power, is my sense of humor. Consequently, it encouraged me to come up with the idea to write a book about humor and how humor has kind of saved me, and it has built my life, basically. So the book is called My Sixth Sense is Humor. I feel like that's my sixth sense. I feel like that's my go-to for everything, whether I'm in a stressful situation, whether I'm at a job, whether I'm doing an interview, whether I'm talking to my wife, whatever it is, my sense of humor is what helps me through. To the point now where, I'm finally, I'm opening my own comedy club. I've put my kids through school. I have two that went through college, one that's still in college. All through making people laugh and entertaining people and being able to generate money from that and have a good living from that. So I go from using it as a coping mechanism to now using it to gainfully employ myself in a industry that's very challenging and very competitive.
Additionally, I would say that you are using it for a form of healing in itself.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I mean, the name of your thing has been Laughaholics for a long time. And, for many years I came to the Lindenwood Diner in Brooklyn and saw you there. And more recently, you wanted to form your own club and started putting something together. Talk about that process.
Yeah, so Laughaholics, so there's a disease out there, guys, called laughaholism. So you have alcoholism, you have drug addiction, but you also have laughaholism. The only difference is you don't lose money, you don't break up your family, it doesn't affect your health. As a matter of fact, it enhances your health. There's been studies, and it's been proven that the more you laugh, the longer of a lifespan you're going to have. There's something about when you laugh, it generates these endorphins or whatever it's called, and it just helps your quality of life. So that's why I decided to call my brand Laughaholics. And I challenge people, sometimes I say this in the beginning of the show, I challenge people to leave and become a laughaholic at the end of the show, become addicted to this, because it's really, really good for you. So I've been doing that for years, Don. I'll take somebody's restaurant or somebody's venue and I'll transform it into a comedy club once or twice a week. And the Lindenwood that you mentioned, I was there 15 years consistently on a Wednesday and Thursday, and they were great to me. They treated me like I was an owner. They gave me percentage of food and drinks. They let me keep the door, and I had a lease there without paying any rent, because they know how much value I bring.
Value you brought.
That I brought. And I said, I couldn't really, actualize my dream on my own because of the cost of the quality type of event that I want to do. So during the pandemic, you know, we can't, you have a lot of time to think. So I said, you know what? Maybe I could get some investors that believes in this, that wants to invest in it, then can match it with my money, and I can do it, and I can give them a percentage of the business. So I started doing, you know, Zoom meetings during the pandemic, and every single person said, I want to do it. We looked you up. You should have did this years ago. Why haven't you ever done it? I got Chris Broussard, who's a major sports personality. I've got, you know, you, Don, who you took an interest in it because you've seen my work and you see what I do. So I got these people together, and I was able to actualize this dream that I've had for a long time. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to be quality, and the place that we have, that we're building, is just great, and it's going to serve two purposes. I have a love for music, and I have a love for comedy. So I'm going to serve those two in the same venue. So we're going to have a sound stage and a comedy club. And so we're calling it 275 Park. I wanted to add a little class to it. Home of Laughaholics Comedy. So
275
Park. Yeah. 275 Park, Home of Laughaholics Comedy Club. The foundation of it is comedy, but you know, being on Video Music Box, you know, we have a love for old school hip hop. We have a love for old school R&B, jazz. I want that element. I want those musicians. I want those artists in there, and I want that. I want that to be, you know, realized in there, as well as the stand-up comedy. And you know, the relationships that I have run deep at this point. Being in entertainment for years, I have relationships with all of the old school hip hop artists from Video Music Box, old school R&B. When I started my comedy career, I now have relationships with all of the A-list comedians, whether it's Kevin Hart, Tracy Morgan, Dave Chappelle. And these are the kinds of acts that we want to come there. We want a classy, upscale place to serve our community through laughter and music. And those two things, those two elements are just amazing, Don. Absolutely. You know, people come home to unwind, they turn on their music, they watch some comedy or a sitcom, which is situational comedy. You know, laughter is a big, big force in a lot of people's lives. Music is a big force, and I wanted to put those two things together and bring it to a venue. And that's happening in 3 weeks, guys. 3 weeks, it's happening.
What's the projected date for people who don't see this right away?
We should, by February, we're going to be on and popping. We're open in January, but full force in February.
Clinton Hill, Brooklyn.
Yeah, Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. Yeah. Love that neighborhood. A lot of brownstones, a lot of black ownership in that neighborhood. It's diverse, but it's a great neighborhood. It's a great location. Unintimidating. So location is important. Yeah. I've done stuff in the hood. I will continue to do stuff deep in East New York or deep in Brownsville. I will never let go of that. But I did have to pick a neutral place where everybody would want to come to. White, black, Latino, the whole nine.
Right. Now this is, you know, there's a story that through my friendship with you that I knew of that happened. And being a specialist in trauma and in therapy, you went through this experience at the Miami airport where you were.
Yeah. Ooh, I didn't know. I didn't think he was gonna bring that. That's cool. Yeah. So let me tell you guys what happened. You really gotta pay attention to this. So, my criminal life done with. My, you know, substance abuse life done with.
For a long time.
January 4th, 1986. I'll never forget that day. My record, clean. I just applied for a gun license. I got my liquor license for the business. You cannot get that with a record. I've cleaned up all of that. All of that is in the past. However, due to a clerical error, what Don was leading you guys on to the story about, I was coming back from Costa Rica, and I got stopped in the airport. Make a long story short, I got stopped in the airport, and the guy told me, they took me in the back, and they said, listen, you have a warrant from August 26, 1981, which consequently, we find out later was a clerical error. But however, it was extremely traumatic because I know how good I've been for so long. But then you also have these things, these spirits that haunt you, Don, like, yo, I did a lot of fucked up shit back in the days. And sometimes I feel like things are gonna come back to me. Like, am I done with it? You know, have I repaid my society? Am I spiritually correct? Am I good with God? Or do I still got some things that need to happen to me because of what I did in my adolescent years? Yeah. It haunts me sometimes, Don. I could be driving and I got my hand out the window and I'm like, I be feeling like my arm is gonna get cut off. Like, I think that, you know, some 18-wheeler is going to jump off the other side of the BQE and hit me head on. Like, I get these things, and the reason why I get these feelings and these thoughts is because of what I did to people. Like, back in the days, like, I hurt a lot of people. I sold a lot of drugs to people. I stole from people. You know, I remember I used to steal cars by newspaper stands where somebody would get out the car, leave the keys in the car, try to get a paper, and I'm sneaking in the car, and I'm driving off with their vehicle. Like, I did a lot of stuff to people. I also helped a lot of people, but I never feel like it's balanced out. So anytime anything happens to me, I always say, yo, I deserve this.
Credit karma for reform tough guys.
Yeah, credit karma. Yeah, like, I'm like, damn. But it was traumatic, Don, because I know I didn't do nothing wrong. Anytime I got arrested and sent to Rikers Island or whatever, sent to jail, it wasn't that traumatic to me because I knew that I did something wrong. Yeah. Now being so straight for so many years, I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I get the orange jumpsuit, Miami-Dade County inmate.
So they stop you at customs?
At customs. And so in customs, when you come through, you got to go through customs. They put your name in the system. I done been out of the country 20-something times, Don.
Right.
I never got stopped. Ever. But the guy in Miami said, this is Miami. You ain't never come through here. Because if you would have came through here before, we would have caught this. This is a hub where immigrants, drug dealers, everybody tries to come through Miami. So we look at everything with a fine-tooth comb. Guarantee you they overlooked that when you went through Kennedy or whatever, you're coming back. He said, have you ever came through Miami? I was like, nah, I never did. He said, well, welcome to Miami. But they didn't believe it because the warrant was so old and it was for the robbery that I'd served time for. And I told him like, yo, I was incarcerated at the time when you're telling me that. I can tell you where I was. I could tell you my inmate number. I could tell you the facility I was in. But nobody wanted to let me go because they didn't want to take the chance of being liable for letting me go.
CYA. They wanted to make sure that they weren't letting go somebody who was a crook.
I wound up spending 72 hours in there. I couldn't sleep. I had suicidal ideations. I was paranoid. It was crazy, bro. I go into the day room, there's inmates in there. I'm looking around, all these dudes with dreads, gold teeth. I'm like, God damn, I can't believe this is happening to me. My wife, when they stopped me, my wife was with me. She's looking at me like, all of a sudden, trust in me was gone. She looked at me and goes, yo, is there something I need to know? I'm like, really? You too? So you and this person, none of y'all believe me.
That's how it felt at that moment.
She was looking at me like, I'm like, and then, you know, when they told me what the charge was, And they let my wife come in there. I'm sitting down. I'm like, yo, I said, I was incarcerated. You could look. He said, yeah, man, but this is a fugitive warrant, sir. We can't let you go. I go in front of the judge. First thing the judge says to me, Don, is, got two things that could happen. Either New York can come and get you. They have up to 15 days to come and extradite you. Or you could contest, but it could take you up to 60 days to get out if you contest.
What a choice.
Those were my options.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Thank God my brother lived in Miami. His ex-wife was a Miami-Dade County police officer. They pushed my name up. They knew the judge. My brother came in the courtroom. Your Honor, my brother's on TV. He's this and that. She was like, oh, she's looking at me on Zoom. It's like, oh, you got your brothers here, your family, your wife is here. And so then she takes a little more interest in the case and she goes, yeah, this doesn't seem right. This man does not, this is 40 years old, this warrant. This is kind of like impossible. So she challenged the DA. She said, you got to find out what's going on. You call New York. We're going to call him a second time at 1 o'clock. So they got in touch with the DA. The DA says to the DA in Miami, we don't have nothing on him. What he got arrested for back then for stealing Pumas? This is what the DA says to the DA in Miami. So when the Miami DA comes back and tells the judge, listen, they're saying that he doesn't have anything, then she said, all right, I'm going to let you go, but you still got to go back to New York and you got to figure that out because this is going to come up again.
Proof that it depends on who is in front of you, who's helping you, that makes a difference.
That makes
because
a difference.
If you didn't have any family members and the woman hadn't taken interest in your case,
I would have stayed there
at least
because I would have
days.
challenged it. I wasn't going to admit to it.
Right.
I would have challenged it and I would have been there, until either they extradited me and, I don't know what could have happened during that time because mentally and emotionally, I was totally like unstable. I was gone to the point where they had to, they responded. So here's the funny part. So I do some of this in my comedy set now. The funny part was I'm calling the inmate because I'm so paranoid. I'm so like, I said, yo, you got to call the captain. I need somebody. So the inmate looks at me. He goes, yo, calls the CO. He's like, yo, CO. Yo, the old dude over here. Yo, this old nigga, get ready. You need to come see this dude. So then that's when they responded. The captain, the EMS, the social worker, they came and took my blood pressure. It was 220 over 1 something.
Oh, my God.
Ah, man, bro, I'm telling you, it was crazy. They was like, you got to get this guy downstairs right now. He's going to have a heart attack. Take him down. And they medicated me. They put the IV, they calmed me down, brought my blood pressure down. Then they still sent me back to a jail unit. It was crazy, man. It was an experience, but I got it cleared up. I got me an attorney. Found out that it was a clerical error. I couldn't sue them because it wasn't
a change of systems in New
Yes.
York caused the clerical error.
Yes,
so
they went
that
from-
exempts them from the lawsuit.
It exempt them. It only exempts them from a lawsuit because it wasn't a district attorney error or a judge error. It was a clerical error. You can't sue the clerk.
Okay.
So that when they were making the transition from analog to digital, they used to have them big books or whatever it was. They missed that. The guy who came out and apologized to me, he said, "Man, I wasn't even working here when this happened."
Yeah, of course, it was like 40
he
years
was like-
ago.
He said, "Man," he said, "we apologize, but you need to stay here for like at least 2 hours because we have to take you off of the fugitive list,
Wow.
the FBI list, the gun trafficking, like all this stuff. They had to take me off because it was a violent crime, and so I had to wait. So now I can't, and even now, Don, I can get on a plane, go on a domestic flight.
Yeah, your brain goes
My
right
brain
back
is
to
like,
that.
they're gonna tell me, "Yo, can I speak to you for a second?" Yeah, even going out of the country, especially when I go through customs, I carry the paper with me now, which it should be in the system, but just in case, I got that paper.
Yeah. Years ago, I had a client who came to me and basically told me that he had a fight while he was in high school in 1986 and got into some trouble then. I don't know, he may not have appeared at his court date, but literally 30 years later, he is taking groceries into his own home. His wife showed up with groceries. He comes outside to help her, carrying a drink that he was drinking in the house. It was Hennessy. A cop was on his block and said, "Oh, sir, what is that in the cup? There's no drinking in public. Step over here." Found out that he was having alcohol in front of his own house, and summarily arrested him after finding a 30-year-old warrant for a fight that he had while he was in high school. And, same kind of thing. He was in there over the weekend.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy, man. But everything that happens, man, I guess is part of my journey, unexplained. But, it was an experience for me. I've cleared it up now to the point where I now know more about my own record. I now know so much that I'm like, wow, I'm good. I could apply for a gun license for my own business. I applied for the liquor license, because I have all this documentation to prove that my record is clear. And so in a way, it kind of pushed me to dig in more about my own documentation, my own history, and what it means for me, like moving forward.
For your brain for you to be able to give yourself the message that, this is all part of my journey, and to have some level of acceptance of what happened instead of being bitter about it is, that's a great thing, because everybody needs tools of coping. And, what you described with comedy and with humor being your coping tool is so great, because there's many people who use the other thing. They use anger, rage, their physical prowess as their way of coping. And usually that lands you either in conflict with other people that leads to, somebody getting hurt or worse, or incarceration.
Well, I've also learned even the negative things that people do lead to a degree of euphoria for them. So what do I mean by that? I mean that serial killers, although it's through rage or anger, they get a great feeling out of that. And things that we get a great feeling from can be very dangerous if we don't control it. So, example of, and this is a contrast or a comparison. Let's take a sexual episode with a couple that they now discover that a little bit of strangulation is enjoyable, right? So you understand that, but you don't understand when somebody strangles somebody to the extreme and they get enjoyment out of it, and you're like, yo. But it's basically the same thing under control. You understand what I'm saying? So people don't understand. It's like anything that makes you feel good can be detrimental. I don't care if it's eating. I don't care if it's buying expensive sneakers. I don't care if it's buying jewelry, whatever, playing bingo, OTB, anything that you love too much can be detrimental. Some dudes get divorced because they're sports fanatics to the point where they're not going to give up nothing to do with sports for time in a marriage or relationship. That's how much they value it Why? Because it brings them so much great feeling that they don't care about nothing else. They don't care about their kids. They don't care about this. They're going to overdo it. And people overdo things and they lose control. That's the whole thing. Are you in control or are you not? Do you know when to stop taking the gummies? Do you know how many cookies to eat? This is the new shit now. Do you know how much to drink? And if you don't know how much to drink, we wrote a law that if you're above this percentage now, you're now illegal.
Legally
because
intoxicated.
we said that you can't go over this amount. People know that, but they still do it because there's a loss of control. And you lose your control to euphoria, period. I don't care if you're overeating, doesn't matter. Rape is based on out of control euphoria, period. This dude is like, can't take it. Dudes that cheat a lot, people that cheat a lot, it ain't got shit to do with anybody. It has everything to do with the feeling. Everything to do with the feeling. At the end of the day, even if it's the challenge of, oh, I'm going to say a particular line to somebody, let me see if they bite. It's the journey. It's like for guys, it's a whole different thing than as opposed to women. But everybody's looking for that light going off in the slot machine. Mm-hmm. And all these lights, people don't understand that it's all a designed plan. They're making you feel a certain way. That's why they bring you the drinks. They bring you the drinks. They impair your ability to make a decision. They give you lights. They let you win here. They let you win there. And then now all of a sudden you have a gambling problem.
All of a sudden you've spent $700 of your rent money.
Right.
And, but there's a lot of things that give people a temporary feeling of power. And I think you're right that a lot of violence that we see is people getting that temporary rush of power, feeling good, feeling powerful, and then when we witness it, we're looking at it like, how could somebody
do that?
Yeah, it's really that.
We do it on smaller levels, but we don't realize it. Why does everybody gravitate to a fight and want to film the fight instead of stop the fight? Because they get enjoyment out of watching the fight. If you ask yourself, why do you get enjoyment out of watching a fight? Why is boxing one of the biggest sports in the world when you're watching two people get beat up? Football is a violent sport. We just witnessed somebody dying on the field. But it's the biggest, generates the most money, and it's violent. People don't understand. They're not, people are not cognizant of what it is, what really moves us.
Well, there's no movie that's a hit drama without having an antagonist and a protagonist. The conflict usually goes to the point of some kind of violence. If you have two people in a movie and there's a love story, there has to eventually be a sex scene, right? That's kind of the formula for, at least in Western society, for a hit.
Yeah, blockbuster movies are violent. The top rated movies are either very violent or very funny. Comedy, and that's why, for me, I choose comedy. I choose laughter. That right there is enough for me. It's enough for me, and thank God I kind of it's enough. Like I get my adrenaline. I get my high. We sitting around, we all laughing, and we're coming up with things that are funny. It's just a drug for me, but it's a positive one. Right. So, I can live by that today because I'm not hurting anybody with laughing. I'm not. I can't go and gamble money on laugh. Like I'm gonna spend too much money on comedy clubs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't really OD with that and damage anything. So it's just a great a great way for me to survive and be happy, man. Like it's really worth a lot. Money is cool, but nah, feeling happy is way better, bro. I've already.
What we do, for a living matters, and a lot of times I would hear, people say that, oh well, whatever your hustle is, it's your hustle. Don't knock anybody's hustle, and by and large, I do agree with that. But people who, let's say, talk about other people and gossip about other people, bring other people down for a living, that's not as good as if you are putting out information or building people up for a living. And laughter is one of those things that I do believe builds people up.
Yeah, but you see that negative, man, that those, when they came out with the reality shows, like, you see how much we as human beings gravitate towards that. It's all in the ratings. All these shows do well, watching a family called the Kardashians live their life, bagging black NBA players and
Right.
the drama. You know what I mean? It's like drama, man. Drama, negativity,
Conflict. It
sells, man, and we're all guilty of it in a sense that, women are more into that than we are, than men. At least the men that subscribe to masculinity. The traditional guy, we're not really into that. But women, that talking and rumors, just, I don't know what it is about that, bro. But people, I can't live. I don't want to live like that anymore. Even as a comedian, I don't like to tear people down. I don't do that. If I do say something, it's not true. I don't look for truth. I don't look for the elephant in the room and address it just so I can get a laugh out of it. Nah, I don't want to do that. It has to be something that they're going to laugh about. And you bring them in. As a matter of fact, they may feel good about you bringing them into whatever it is. But yeah, even in that sense, in comedy, like a lot of comedians that do that, that's looked down upon now. Like you can't, take advantage of people like that. So, my thing is, man, like Don, we were talking about, you were saying that people got to do what they're passionate about. And in the here and now, like I was talking to Asia, who's the producer of the show, by the way. Asia was telling me that she's wanted to pursue another career that she's passionate about. And she was originally, working on something in biology. But then she discovered that she has a passion for this, which I think that she'll go further with because this is what she loves. So in counseling, I remember counseling this guy, right, Don? He was very quiet, very passive. He don't like to talk a lot. And he was pretty much like 34, 35 years old. He was kind of like a grown man. And he was looking to get into employment. And he was, asking me what I think you should do. I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, well, I really don't know. I said, well, based on your personality, you need to do something where you don't have to be bothered with people. You don't have to meet that challenge every day of the rest of your life because you're going to spend a lot of time at this job.
Right.
Maybe you could invest in an 18-wheeler and have your own. It'll just be you in that cabin, bro. You ain't got to talk to nobody. You meet those challenges when you go home. If that's the person that you love being, sometimes, man, when one counselor told a dude, yo, you should be a counselor or whatever. Man, that dude relapsed in 2 months. Okay? He's not a talker. Why would you encourage somebody to do a job that requires him to meet that challenge every day?
All the time.
All the time.
Just trying to work, right?
That's too much.
Yeah.
Let him work on that on his own gradually. You can't just throw him out there in the fire, bro. Like, it's crazy, man. So I do what I love now. Sometimes I make a lot of money doing it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's dry times, dry spells. Sometimes it's not. It makes a difference, but at the end of the day, it doesn't. Because if I was to die today, I would shake God's hand and say I had a good time. I enjoyed my life. Because I've been doing 95% of what I want to do. And that I'm good at and that I'm passionate about. That's what makes me happy, regardless. It's not a woman. It's not my kids. All those things complement me. All those things enhance who I am. But it's not the answer. The answer to who I am is what I believe in and what I do for people. I am a reflection of what I do for you. As long as I keep doing for people, then I'm good. Like I was telling you earlier, Don, my self-esteem or my self-confidence or my self-worth is manufactured by things that I do to build my people, my community, my children, and myself. So if I do something good, if I make somebody laugh, if I'm serving a great purpose, if I'm coming here on the podcast and it's reaching somebody, then I'm good. When I go on a hold on and I'm not doing anything, then that's when I start to feel like I don't feel too good about that. I'm gonna keep doing because that's my purpose. I realize what my purpose is now, and I realize one thing that made me realize it is that one day one customer out of 500 complained about something, and my assistant pointed out, said, "Ray, yo, you went all out just to make sure that that person was good." She said, "No, really. You went and you talked to this person, you talked to that person, you did this, you gave them 3 free shows, you put them on the list, you gave them tickets to this. Like, why did you do all of that?" And I was like, because I'm only as good as my last deed. That's the thing that I'm going to be judged by. The last thing you do is what people remember. They don't remember nothing else. Mm-hmm. Everything else you did in your life, yeah, sometimes you get honored here and there, but people get past it, man. You died, Don, like 2-3 weeks later, everybody moved on. I want to serve my purpose while I'm here. I want to serve people. And that's the thing I was telling you, Don. Like, I was like, yo, I don't stop because I don't feel like I made up. I don't feel like I'm done yet. Yeah. That's a motivation for me. At 60 years old, I feel like I'm 25 when it comes to my energy and doing things, for people, man. So, thanks for being here, bro. Like, this is it's also therapy for me.
That was a great segue into ending the idea of purpose and the idea of the fact that you feel your purpose by what you do every day. Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same here, Don. So we got a lot of work to do. We got the club coming, man. So yeah, it's gonna be great, man. I live my life one day at a time.
That's right. 275 Park coming soon to Brooklyn, February 2023. Check us out. So, Help to Adjust, the podcast focuses on issues of psychology, equity, and inclusion. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button. And Ray, give people your contacts and socials.
Yeah, I no longer have a MySpace page, and I no longer have a membership on blackplanet.com. I'm an old dude with an Instagram page, and I got over 30,000 followers, and I need more. So my Instagram is at Ray Dejon, Raydejon. By the way, Dejon is French. It's really spelled Dejean, but you guys don't pronounce it correctly. It's French. My mother's Puerto Rican and my father's Haitian, which equals Dominican, but that's a whole nother story. So at Ray Dejon, Raydejon. The club's name is 275 Park, home of Laughaholics Comedy Club and Sound Stage. Musicians, A-list comedians. It's going to be super dope. You know, come and support Black-owned business. My partner, his name is Kwame. And, you know, we're living our dream thanks to a lot of our investors, such as Don and other people that invested in my dream. Thanks for being I appreciate being on the podcast. And I hope to see you guys soon, man.
All right. Peace and love, brother.
Yes, sir.